Hey guys, how y'all doing today? My name is Franchise Fanatic and welcome back to Star Wars Month. And today for you guys is another Star Wars movie review. We already tackled The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Today we're working on the next. Now I know this is not part of the Skywalker Saga. Technically the Skywalker Saga is all 9 films. However, this one is still canon and still part of the overarching universe. And that is, of course, Episode 1, Episode 2. And before you go to Episode 3, you have to watch Star Wars The Clone Wars. Now, I reviewed this movie, I watched this movie last night, and let me tell you, I watched a lot of this film when I was a kid, right? I memorized all the fight scenes, it was freaking dope. And going back to this movie, I asked him, like, is this nostalgia, or is it actually a good film? And I'm pleased to tell you that it is a good film. After the Episode 1 and 2, which were just, the Clone Wars movie really is the first one where I'm like, oh great, this is a good movie, you know what I mean? It's really, really good. Not much is wrong with it. So, I have my list. Let's begin. So, we have the animation. Now, of course, this is the first animated movie in this world, and let me tell you that it looks good for 2008. I will say that the Clone Wars TV show and the Rebels TV show and Resistance look better. Of course, they're newer. However, with this, it's good, but there are some texture things that don't look good. It looks like a SNES game. The facial animations are really weird. Sometimes the characters' lips don't move, or they just look really wooden and stiff. So sadly, that is going to be my first negative. The animation is really good, but it's not as good as what you would want from, say, a feature-length film, especially because the show is better. The voice acting. This is voice acting at its finest, man. D. Bradley Baker being the clones. Talking about blanking the clankers and all that. We have Yoda by Tom Kane. We have Ashley Eckstein playing Ahsoka Tano. And, of course, we have Matt Lamar, I think, voicing Anakin Skywalker. Next thing here. Best actor to portray Anakin Skywalker. Hayden Christensen, Jake Lloyd, what the hell's his name? Matt something. Great. He is amazing. And it's really weird watching Jake and then Hayden and then Matt, and then Hayden again. You're like, when you watch Episode 3, you're like, darn it, it's not him. But I will say, when I review Revenge of the Sith, I have some other things about that. But, Matt, dude, you are a effing good Luke Skywalker, or Anakin Skywalker, excuse me. And you are, in my opinion, he's the best Anakin Skywalker there is. Like I said, Jake and Hayden, they're okay. Some scenes they're great, and some scenes they're horrible, and some scenes they're just alright. But this one, I never found a bad scene with this guy in this and the entirety of the Clone Wars show. Of course, the sound. Now we have to get to the sound. This is fairly easy. The music is great. The blaster sounds are great. The lightsaber effects are great. Of course, the voice acting is great. Everything is great with the sound. I just had to mention it because it is part of the thing. Nothing cuts out. Nothing's weird. Sometimes there is a scene where, like, Ventress is fighting Obi-Wan in that area, and the music kind of cuts out, and I don't know about you, but when you need an action scene, it has to be extremely loud. Not extremely loud, but, louder than a talking scene. And some of the action scenes, especially the one with Saj Ventress and Obi-Wan Kenobi, are a little bit too quiet for my liking. But still, that's not really a negative, that's just my personal preference. So sound is A-okay. The plot. The plot is good and bad. Essentially, the plot is good because it follows a war in the beginning and then follows another kind of smaller scale thing with Anakin and Ahsoka Tano trying to rescue the Hutt, the Jabba the Hutt's son, or Stinky, Huttlet, so that they can essentially open trading routes and different routes to the Hutt clan so that the Republic can win the war in the Clone Wars. So, I never really understood the plot when I was a kid, but now I do, and let me tell you that it's pretty friggin' cool. Again, the Clone Wars TV show and the whole prequels, really, they're very smaller scale things. We have to open a banking clan, we have to open the Hutt's clan, we have to get access from trading routes and politics, and that's what it is. So I think everyone biatching, going, oh, it's so boring. It really is. It's not The Last Jedi. It's not The Rise of Skywalker. There's no massive scale thing yet. It really is trying to get the upper hand before the Separatists do in the Clone Wars, and that is a perfect example here with, of course, whoever gets the Huttlet, Stinky, to Jabba the Hutt, and the Hutt clan can essentially, gain the upper hand in the war, a pivotal foothold in the war. So, very cool. However, the plot is bad. Not really bad, but it falters because, again, this is the first animated canon film in theaters, and the plot, really, it's a good plot, but I think the plot would really work better for the TV show. I do think because of the film, you really should have gotten a more high-stakes plot. Maybe you should have kept going with the war in the beginning. I just feel like breaking it up into Anakin and Ahsoka, finding this Huttlet is a bit, not boring, but for a film that you see in theaters, it is not, not even Episode 1 and 2 level caliber. It's just kind of, it's just TV show stuff, and I really think they should have went a little bit more stakes with the film thing. Same with the animation, so. But again, plot is fine, but as I review this for a film, it is a bit lower stakes than what I would have wanted. Of course, we have the segue into the TV show. This is, of course, the Clone Wars film. Right after the Clone Wars film, canon-wise, you essentially go Clone Wars movie, Clone Wars TV show, Episode 3. And this is the perfect segue into the show. Of course, we meet Ahsoka Tano for the first time. We kind of get Anakin and Ahsoka's relationship. You have Obi-Wan Kenobi in there. You got Yoda, Ventress for the first time. The Clone Wars are really heavily used. Of course, D. Bradley Baker being the clones for the first time in this. Everything really sets a big role into what the Clone Wars show is going to be, and of course, affecting the whole Star Wars Skywalker saga. We have the lore and the canon. Like I said, this kind of ties into the same thing, but the lore and canon, we see more of Geonosis. We see more of a lot of planets. We see Asajj Ventress and Wat Tambor and clones more. We have a new clone voice, which is also in Attack of the Clones. But a lot of this, like I said, it segues into the Clone Wars show, but it really does make sure that the whole Skywalker saga is affected by this. It's really, really cool. The directing. I'm not sure who directed this. It was not George Lucas. George Lucas was executive producer. And it's funny, because like I always said, George Lucas began with Star Wars, but he also kind of killed Star Wars. And that's why I don't really like Episode 1, 2, 3 a whole lot, is because they're not, since he's directing and writing, he's not really doing a good job of them. I don't think he's a good writer at all, and I don't think that he's a good director at all. But some lines are great, and some directing is great, but most of the time it's very hit and miss. This movie is not hit and miss. It's very much, very, very well directed. There's a few weird shots in there, like when Wat Tambor and someone else is talking, it's like a baby's looking at them with the camera angle, but that, again, that's not going to be a negative, that's just my personal preference. There wasn't any shot in this film where I was like, oh, that looks like crap, or that's shit, or that's really weird. It's like, no, this looks really good, you know? If you're not George doing it, it's pretty darn good. Of course, we have to go to the editing next. The editing is amazing. The music doesn't cut out like Attack of the Clones. There's no weird scene transitions that are really skippy or anything like that. Of course, there's a few scenes that kind of negatively, end very abruptly. And because this is a film, it's longer than a 22-minute episode. It's about 98 minutes or so. But there's a lot of scenes in this movie that feel very rushed, and that's the bad thing. The editing in this movie is great, but then some scenes end really fast, and some of them last far too long. So the editing is kind of hit and miss in this. Of course, we have Zero the Hutt and his emotional struggle, I guess, and of course his future death in the Clone Wars TV show. Spoiler alert, Zero the Hutt dies in the Clone Wars. He gets killed by his girlfriend, which is kind of funny. So he was always funny. Zero the Hutt was always funny when I was a kid, talking like this. He was funny. And of course, now that I'm an adult, I'm like, there's a lot of pink in there. But there is, he does eventually get a girlfriend, and it's some weird alien thing, and she's kind of annoying in the show, and she kills him for money and whatever. So it is really an arc that is beginning with Zero the Hutt. Not a big thing, but I had to mention it because, again, he does play a little bit of a role in the show. We have Stinky. Now, Stinky is, of course, the Huttlet. I don't think we get a real name of this Hutt. We just, Ahsoka calls him Stinky, kind of like I call my dog. But no, the entire thing with Stinky, this Huttlet, is good and bad. He's funny at times. He's actually really funny at times. And then he never gets annoying. That's the big thing. Stinky never gets annoying. Thankfully, I don't have 4D or whatever, so I can't smell him. But the whole thing, really, Stinky's a good thing, but the plot about Stinky is kind of weird. Like I said in the beginning, the plot for this movie is kind of weak for a film, but it still is a good plot. Here we go, sorry if you hear that, but going on to Ahsoka Tano, a lot of people were like, oh, Ahsoka Tano in this movie is stupid, she's like Rose or Jar Jar, I hate Ahsoka. And again, that's fine if you don't like Ahsoka in this movie, but I really do have to disagree. I do think that Ahsoka Tano, yes, she is a youngling, she is a Padawan in this movie, and I don't know, maybe 13, 14 in this film. She is a kid, or a teenager. So she's going to get snippy, that's why Anakin calls her Snips. She is going to talk back, she is going to kind of rush into things, kind of like Cal Kestis in Jedi Fallen Order. He's still learning, so of course you do have to kind of watch what happens and all that. And of course, with her, a lot of things, she's like, oh, I'm going to rush in here, and Anakin's like, don't do that, and she almost gets herself killed, and him killed a bunch of times. But for people to say that Ahsoka is a bad character, or that she's in here because it's a kid's movie, and she's a kid's character, that is completely inaccurate and wrong. Ahsoka Tano is a great character, especially in the Clone Wars, and especially in Rebels. But in this movie, to see her be so young and innocent and kind of hardy, hard-heading and, cocky like Anakin was in Attack of the Clones, Episode 2, it really is cool to see. And, of course, there is a time jump between Episode 2 and this Clone Wars film, because, of course, Anakin is a little older and more wiser. He's more of a Jedi leader now, more or less than a Padawan. So it's kind of cool that he is taking on that lesson and applying what he knows to Ahsoka, and that is really cool. But for people to say that, oh, Ahsoka's just a kid's character, no, I'm an adult, and I totally agree with Ahsoka. You have to understand the plot. Star Wars, you really can't take Star Wars at base value. People look at a scene and something happens or something is said, and they go, oh, that's kiddie, or that's dumb, or that didn't make any sense, I hate this movie. It's very much like that. And you kind of have to have a brain and think about it. And Ahsoka is a youngling, so for her to act that way makes a lot of sense. And in the Clone Wars, you see her progression into a teenager, adult, and of course Rebels that pay off there. So she is a great character, and I have no complaints about her in this film. She does not get annoying. In fact, she's pretty funny at times. We have the clones. This is the first time the clone troopers are heavily used a lot, you know, about the flankers and all that, shooting people, and there are a lot of great action scenes. A lot of clones die in this movie, which is great. It's great to see the droids get killed, but it's also see the I don't want to see clone troopers die, of course, I'm on the good side. But, you know, it's a good thing to show not only 10-year-olds who can see this film, but also teenagers and adults who watch this, because it is for all ages. It is very much, well, I wouldn't really say it's for kids, but you know what I mean. It's very much, you get to see death on both sides, and that really does affect war, you know. We have the battles and action scenes. I love the battles and action scenes. They're very high kinetic, they're very well shot. There's none of this stupid-ass rope swinging thing like Episode 2. It is very well shot. Again, the the Obi-Wan and the Obi-Wan and Ventress fight is a little bit strange with the sound, but other than that, I really do think it holds up, and I really do like the action in this movie. Especially the climactic battle between the Magna Guards, Count Dooku, Anakin, and Ahsoka. Really, really cool stuff in the end there. New characters, of course, I'm not going to dive into this very much at all. Of course, you have Ahsoka. A bunch of new characters that are in this film that you're going to see fleshed out in the Clone Wars TV show, Rebels, and of course, the other films. The writing. The writing in this movie is top-notch. I don't think there was a single cringy moment in this movie, unlike Episode 1, 2, and 3, but I'll get into 3 when I review that soon. It very much is a very well-written movie. Of course, not perfect. I don't think any Star Wars movie is written perfectly except for maybe 1 or 2, but there's nothing really negative here at all. It's miles better than Episode 1 and 2. And really, Episode 1 and 2, my biggest issues, if you saw those reviews, were the writing and the acting. And they're not bad movies, but again, it's hit and miss. This is very much a positive in terms of that. I'm glad George Lucas did not direct or write this, and it sounds really bitchy and weird of me to say, but George Lucas, like I said, he's not the best writer and director. In fact, he's pretty bad at it. That's that. I'm glad George Lucas is here, and I'm glad he made Star Wars, but you know, I'm glad people are starting to Kathleen Kennedy, you know, Dave Filoni, Matt, everyone in charge here. Kathleen Kennedy, by the way, I think you're doing a great job. I don't know why everyone hates you. I think you're doing great. Men and women are equal, by the way. Of course, it makes you care about the prequels more. That is the best part about it. It really does. If you watch 1, 2, 3, you like it, but then you watch 1, 2, Clone Wars show, 3, it's a whole new world, man, really. After I watched the Clone Wars TV show, I was like, damn, everything makes more sense. I understand Jar Jar more. I love Jar Jar. I love Ahsoka more. Everything makes more sense, and it really does flesh out the prequel, and of course the Skywalker Saga world. So, with all that being said, guys, I'm going to give Star Wars The Clone Wars an A-. Of course, I gave Attack of the Clones a C+, which Attack of the Clones is going to be the only Star Wars film I give a C+. I'm going to be reviewing the holiday special too, so please pray for me. But yeah, so it should be, may the Force be with me, right? Godspeed Rebels. It should be pretty fun, nonetheless, kind of corny, but we'll have to see how it goes. Again, Clone Wars, I love this movie. Again, I love every Star Wars movie, but looking at these Star Wars films, not as a Star Wars fan, like I said, 1 and 2 is very much hit and miss in a lot of regards. This movie is very positive a lot of the time. Again, the sound is weird, the editing can be a little strange sometimes, and the directing is good, but not perfect. Again, the plot and the animation, like I said, can be a little strange too. But other than that, The Clone Wars is a great film. If you have not seen it, it is canon. It is part of the Skywalker Saga. Please do and check it out. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this. Please tell me what you thought about Star Wars The Clone Wars in the comments. Next video up on the movie review list will be Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Thank you guys. May the Force be with you. And we'll see you guys in the next video.